There we go.
There you are.
There I am.
Your
I,
camera has your camera's just as close in your face as mine is.
that's true. I really should kind of sit back a little bit. But did you say you're from New York?
No, I lived in the New York area at some point in time for about 15 years, I want to say. Close to it, not in New York, but I am from New Jersey,
Okay.
and my business is currently based out of the Philadelphia area.
Oh, cool. One of my favorite cities.
Really? And
Yeah,
why is Philadelphia your favorite?
because I'm a Pennsylvania boy.
Ooh, really? That's your
Yeah,
hometown.
I I grew up about 40 miles south of Scranton,
Wow.
Pennsylvania.
And where are you
And
at now?
I'm right now I'm in Hopewell Junction, which is um, in the Hudson Valley. I'm about an hour and a half outside of the city. I'm in
Uh,
Dutchess County.
which
I'm
city?
about
Philadelphia or New York?
in New York, Hopewell Junction in New York.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've
I'm
never
an,
heard of that area.
about an hour and 15 minutes from Manhattan by train. A good baseball player could stand up on my roof and put a ball in the Hudson River.
A good one, not
A
just
good
no
one.
average one.
Well, Roberto Clemente could do it, that's for sure. Uh, but um, I, uh, I actually, I joined the company. I've been in distribution and manufacturing for years.
Mm-hmm.
I've been CFO for about 30 years. And my last company was a $250 million distributor in Brewster. And the bulk of the business was in Manhattan.
Oh.
Um, and high quality specialty food distributor.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was there, you know, the average CFO's tenure is maybe a year and a half to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 10 years. And I just, it was a mutual decision for us to part ways.
Mm.
And they're still very, very good friends of mine.
Right.
The CEO and owner of the company calls me like once a month just to see how are you, how you doing. I
Oh,
mean, it's just really nice. It's very, 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 very nice.
wow.
But
That speaks volumes about you.
well, does it?
Yeah,
I'm
I
not.
think so.
Yeah. Well, um, I've been doing a biography for my web developer. So,
Mm.
and I started it 2 days ago, and because I went from Armstrong World Industries, the floor tile company, right out of school,
Mm-hmm.
to Penn State, to which is a great school, by the way. Not that I'm prejudiced, right? Uh, and then I went to work for Wise Potato Chips in Barwick, Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah, and that was owned by Borden at the time. It's now owned by KKR, but it
Hmm.
was owned by Borden. And I was there for 4 years.
I
And
love me
this,
some potato chips.
oh boy, they're great stuff. I think I gained about 20 pounds while I worked there.
When it
Um,
comes to potato chips, Donald, I really don't care how much weight I gain. That and
listen,
ice cream.
I, you're in my corner, that's for sure. uh, and I was contacted by a headhunter,
Mm.
and I went to Knoll International, the furniture manufacturer just below Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
At the time, we were doing about $300 million a year in business, and whereas Borden was $4 billion and Armstrong was a $1.6 billion company.
Mm.
Um, and I got to tell you this, you'll love this. The very first day I muster in at Armstrong, The vice president and controller of the entire company hands me a FASB 13 pronouncement, which would just come out from the AICPA, and says, make sure the Armstrong Corporation is in compliance worldwide. And I just about died. And I must have done a good job, because about 2 months later, I was in a meeting with the CEO of the corporation.
Holy cow.
And I've only been there, I was only there like 2 months, right?
Wow.
Because the next project they gave me was Jimmy Carter's wage and price controls, which was an absolute disaster. That whole that economy during that time period was definitely challenged.
That didn't set you back, did you, with your career?
Listen, I set a goal when I graduated from Penn State University in 1978, and I said within 10 years, I want to have my MBA and be a vice president someplace. I did it in 9.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. That's for damn sure.
I hear you.
You know, because when you go from one company to another, you think you know the company that you're going to, but you won't know for at least a year after you're there.
I agree. Sometimes you know sooner than that. I have experience not only with employers, but I have had experience with associations, boards I sat on, ex-employers. I remember one employer, I was with them for 2 months, and then right away I saw things that made me second guess my decision. And I said, what did I get myself into? And then
that's a horrible feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a horrible feeling to be in. It's horrible. It's scary. It's frightening. It's nerve-wracking, because you're trying to figure out what's the best move for you. Do I stick around, or do I bail now? And I respect those people that get up and say, I'm out of here. This didn't work out for me. Other opportunities. They're very passive aggressive. I'm not a passive aggressive person, Donald. I feel as though that I have to explain the reasons why, because it's valuable information if those people allow it to be, to help them moving forward. So I also don't like to be a quitter. And so it was so stressful. You know, do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? How do I navigate? This doesn't sit well for me. So I'm a communicator. There's been times where I say to my bosses or whoever, and say, listen, here's what I'm experiencing. Here's how I'm feeling. How can we work this out? And unfortunately, some people take that the wrong way, and they look at it as you telling them what to do. And then it becomes a power competition, or, you know, a power of authority type of competition, or they got other people in their ears talking to them. So it becomes a disaster. And I've been with associations where I found out it wasn't a good idea for me to be a part of them within 3 months. You know, and you learn a whole lot about people in a short time. And I'm sure, you know, the reverse applies too. They probably learn a whole lot about me.
How about you? Yes, for sure. Did you ever hear of a little company called U.S. Food Service?
What is it called?
U.S. Foods?
Yes.
I created that company.
Get out of here.
I'm serious. I'm dead serious. I joined.
I can see only your right eye. Can you center yourself? There you go. I want everybody to see the handsome face you have.
You're too kind. The same headhunter that placed me at Knoll International below Allentown, PA, called me one day and said, I've got this food distributor in Pittston, Pennsylvania, called Bevico Food Service.
Everything's in Pennsylvania, huh?
I stayed in Pennsylvania. And at the time where I was at Knoll, I was commuting 60 miles a day, one way. And up over the Lehigh Mountains and all kinds of stuff. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And I won't bore you with the number of accidents that I had during that time, that 4-year time period. But in any event, they asked me if I wanted to be the vice president and chief financial officer of this $70 million company called Bevico Food Service. And I said, can I think about it? And when they finally offered me the job, I said, why did you offer it to me?
Ooh,
I said, because
good question.
you were the only one that didn't look scared to death.
Is that luck or is that a curse for that particular job?
It was a curse. Let me tell you why.
Oh.
Frank Bevavino owned that company, and he had it up for sale when he hired me. And I didn't know it, obviously. I mean, I had a great package. I had a company car and an expense account and a good salary and all that stuff. So I came on board in July. In September, he walks into my office with a contract about this thick. And he says, you have to help me sell the company to IU International in Philadelphia. And I looked up at him and I said, is it too late to negotiate my golden parachute? And he said, yeah, you should have thought of that earlier. And I thought, you son of a gun.
Oh,
so
God.
I'm on board like 3 months. And we start down this path of an acquisition audit. The difference between a regular audit and an acquisition audit is in an acquisition audit, there is no such thing, there's no concept of materiality. Everything is material because for every dollar of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is $8 in purchase price. Exactly. And there was an income test, and there was an asset test and an income test. So needless to say, I was a bit tense, to say the least.
I can only imagine, yeah.
So we get the deal done. I go back to being the CFO of this company. And in about December of the same year, a corporate raider hits our public company, our parent. IU International, at the time, had $150 million in cash sitting on their balance sheet. And this raider wanted just the cash in the environmental services division. Oddly enough, when the CEO, Jack Christie, he flew up from Philadelphia in his private Citation II jet. Right? And
he wasn't doing so bad.
Well,
for a business that was going under.
He was an ex-Navy pilot, so he was terribly arrogant. But I can understand if you're a Navy pilot and landing is a controlled crash.
Mm-hmm.
Take off, you go from 0 to 180 miles an hour in 3 seconds. So I had a lot of respect for him. And he gives us this lackluster speech about how great it's going to be an IU company, yada, 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 yada. And he asked if there were any questions. I said, yeah, I have one. And I'd done my homework because they were a publicly traded company. I could see their balance sheet. I said, Jack, you've got $150 million in cash sitting on your balance sheet. You just told us that you require an above average return on your operating companies. What in God's name are you doing to prevent a hostile takeover? That conversation took place in October. The raider hit a month later. So again, Frank walks into my office and he says, what do you know about leverage buyouts? I said, absolutely nothing. Wow. He said, well, you're going to learn. between he and I, we wrote a 18 module leverage buyout model. And we went off to Manhattan to find in excess of $200 million to buy the whole damn division. Mm. So we're negotiating with different investment bankers, and I could only get the price, according to my model, I could only get the price to $185, $5 million, and I kept tripping the credit line. And what that means is that you're out of business because you're out of cash.
Yeah.
So we're coming back on the plane. I looked over at Frank and I said, Frank, do me a favor. Find me a manufacturer who's willing to put $30 million into this deal. I said, because otherwise it's not going to happen. Mm. He said, Sarah Lee's been calling me like every other day. And I said, for God's sakes, call him back. I mean, I could write a book, and this is all true. Sarah Lee owned PYA Monarch in Greenville, South Carolina, and our flagship was Biggers Brothers in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Holy
and
cow.
Sarah Lee was deathly afraid that our flagship, which was doing $400 million a year in business, would fall into the hands of Cisco and upset the balance of power for decades, which they would have done. And I stopped them. Sarah Lee put $30 million of PIK preferred, which means that you pay the dividend with stock and not with cash. And we closed on the deal. And then I went back to being, and it was the scariest goddamn thing I've ever done in my life, excuse my language, because I had my own money invested. Wow. And I knew, when you got $150,000 of your own money invested in a deal, when leverage is working for you, it's the most wonderful thing in the world. When it's working against you, it's your greatest nightmare. So I went back to being the CFO, and then I got called over to the corporate headquarters to buy companies and bring all, because we had 4 companies, but they didn't act like one. They didn't have common item numbers. They didn't have common vendors. They didn't have any of that stuff. So that we had to synergize all of those. That was part of my jobs, one of my jobs. So then I get this laptop order entry project. And this is 1990. The compact no computer had just come out. And I got that project done for 300 salespeople in 8 states in 9 months. You talk about white knuckle time. I basically changed the order entry system for a $650 million company on the fly.
Wow.
I learned a great deal out of that project.
Wow. What do you feel as though you learned?
Never, ever, ever underestimate the human factor involved in any project. Because in that type of scenario, you'll get 20% will be early adopters who will want to use it. They'll see the value and jump right in. You'll have 20% who'll say, I'll never use it at all. And you got, and the folks in the middle, will do it. They're just going to take some training.
Right.
So I got that done. My next project was to network all of the mainframes in the group so that if one computer system would go down, say the computer system in Charlotte went down, we could flip a switch and run that out of Pennsylvania or Virginia or wherever.
Right.
Very, very, very complex and very difficult project. I mean, today it would be nothing because you do everything over the internet. But this was 1991. I mean, this was, definitely on the bleeding edge, not the leading edge of technology, but on the bleeding edge of technology. So I got that done.
So what are you doing now? What's your focus and business that you have right now?
What I do is I help companies see the forest for the trees, because a lot of people have a lot of companies have the wherewithal to do what they need to do. Sometimes they just need a push. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they need someone to come in and revamp the whole company, which I've done that in the past.
That's true.
And cut the payroll by an annual $1.3 million.
Sometimes they need an aha moment to get to those points. You can't help people if they don't realize they need help. And if they don't realize that they need a change in order to see improvement or growth. So sometimes they need that aha moment too.
Yeah, and there's another name for it.
What's that?
A good swift kick in the butt.
Just pushing.
They gotta push them in the right direction.
If you won't jump, we'll push you off the ledge.
Hell yes. So this is, I started DJ's Business Strategies LLC at the end of 2019. And I had a very nice business going on with food service distributors. And then COVID-19 hit. I had one client who lost 75% of his volume in one day. Wow. How he ever survived, I'll never know. He must have put a lot of money into that company because, wow. And I've seen I saw a $250 million company lose 50% of their volume in 2 weeks. Well, you can only stave off the bank so long.
Right.
If you keep tripping covenants, eventually somebody in an Ivy White tower someplace is going to say, huh? Yeah. What are you doing? But there's an old axiom, and I'm going to let you understand this. If you owe the bank $10,000 and you can't pay, you're in trouble. If you owe the bank, if you have a corporation who owes the bank $100 million and can't pay, the bank's in trouble.
Oh, the bank's in trouble, huh?
Bank's in trouble because they probably don't have the reserves to cover that.
Yeah.
Here's a good example. When I was at Unifax, which ultimately became the U in U.S. Food Service, we had a $10 million principal payment coming due to Chase. We didn't have a clue as to where the cash was going to come from. So I walked into my boss's office, and I said, Frank, we have a problem. He said, what is it? And I told him. He said, Don, do you think that they're going to come in here and run this company? I said, no, but they might fire your ass and mine and bring 2 other people. He didn't like that much. He threw an ashtray at me. And I recognized that our tenure was not going to be much longer. So so what I do now is there's an enormous number of companies out there today who are what I call over-leveraged. They may have good sales, they might have good earnings, but their cash flow is all going to the bank just to pay for their debt service. So they can't grow. They can't do the things that are necessary for a company and spend money on marketing and to get market share and to try different strategies. So I give them the opportunity to say, listen, eventually you're going to get your 90-day letter from your bank. And when that happens, it's all over but the screaming.
Right.
So let's fix it before that happens. And most entrepreneurs have a very difficult time facing that reality. But if they don't,
why do you think they have a difficult time facing that reality? What is it that are causing them to have those hangups?
It's their baby.
Yeah, that's true.
They put their life and their probably a lot of their own money and blood, sweat, and tears into this company, and they can't fathom the idea of selling a portion of it to some outsider.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, it's a very real response.
Mm-hmm.
But my response to that is owning 75% of something is a whole lot better than owning 100% of nothing.
That's true. So what do you do to convince them to consider the options that you're presenting them with? What is the aha moment for them to realize, okay, maybe I should consider this and own 75% of what I built from the ground up and give somebody else a small portion?
The aha moment is when they can't make their debt service payments. Mm-hmm. When they don't have enough cash to do that. That's the aha moment. And if you can get their attention before that happens, you can prevent that from ever happening. Mm. And that's what I tell them. Say, listen, you know, they say, well, they'll say to me, take a look at my income statement. I said, I don't want to see your income statement. How about my balance sheet? I said, I don't want to see your balance sheet. Mm. I want to see your cash flow statement because that's where all of the decisions of management end up on one sheet of paper.
Right.
Whether you're making money or losing money, whether you're creating cash or using cash. Because if you lose money, it has to be financed from somewhere. Right. It's either from your vendors or from your line of credit with your bank. And eventually, if you're not careful, you trip the covenant, you trip the limit on your line of credit. And when that happens, no one's going to save you. Because the bank will send them a letter saying, see ya, find a new bank. And in today's environment, I've talked with Chase, Wells Fargo, TD, major banks. Their focus right now is not taking on any new loans.
That's right.
It's cultivating the customers that they currently have and making sure that they stay afloat.
A lot of them are doing that, PNC, you name it.
They're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm. They're not taking any risk because it's just too risky for them, and there's too much going on, especially with the pandemic having such an impact on people's stability of job security and financial needs. Why even try to take a risk? Grant you, they will want to offer better customer service and say, here, we're going to be flexible with you and all that stuff. And they're like, no, not for new customers. For existing customers, yes, we're willing to, like you say, nurture those relationships and see how we can best support them so that at least we know this is what we have. And we don't want to lose those. But bring in new clients and new contracts, no.
That's also happening in the private equity world.
Yeah.
I spoke with the owner of a private equity company in Cleveland, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And she says that they used to allocate 30% of their total capital available to their existing portfolio and 70% on new deals. Now it's just reversed. 70% on your existing portfolio because you want to keep them healthy.
Right.
And only 30% on something that might come along that looks good. And you know what the real definition of a bank's charter is?
What?
Banks are in the business of lending money to people who don't need it.
Where do you want to see your business for this year? I normally wrap up my interviews with a fun fact question. And my fun fact question for you is, where do you want to see yourself with what you can offer people for 21?
I want to have more clients than I can service, because it's always a good position to be in.
You think so? Do you think that's going to water down the quality of services if you end up getting that? Or is it a great opportunity for you to offer jobs to people and help the economy out?
That too. And offload business to other people I know in my industry, that if I had a pinch point, if I was heading towards a maximum, I would start looking around for people who I know very well, who could do the same thing that I do, and I wouldn't be afraid to recommend them to somebody else, because that's the real key. The real key is you have to surround yourself with people that are positive, that are aggressive, that are smarter than you, and I have no qualms about doing that, and people that you can, that you wouldn't be afraid to bring home to Sunday dinner.
There you go. I agree with you. I think you and I are cut from the same cloth in that area, where we're both old school and we do business with people. The relationships that we build and nurture through business is how we do business. You know, we want to get to know these people. We don't want a flyby. Hey, how you doing? Just checking in. How you doing? Okay, goodbye. No, you want to get to know who they are. You want to know who you're working with. You want to know who you're referring clients and other people to. You want to know that you have the same work ethics and so forth. So yeah, I agree with you. And those are usually people that I wouldn't mind having at my house for dinner, or the people that I feel as though I can trust.
Let me give you a great example. I have a good friend in San Diego who was in the food service distribution business with me. Mm-hmm. He started his own consulting company probably 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's got 24 people working for him. And I respect this kid, and he's a lot younger than I am. So anybody less than 50 years old to me is a kid. So.
You may be right there.
I know people like that I trust. Mm-hmm. And people who in the past have brought projects to me or customers to me, and I would repay the favor. Mm. But I want to, first of all, I don't want to move. I've been down that road too many times. Mm. And my wife and I built this home here in the Hudson Valley. I bought 2.5 acres of land on the side of a mountain. Right. And she designed it and I built it. Oh. Yeah, she's got everything she wanted. And surprisingly enough, it looks a lot like, or the layout looks a lot like the house we had in Syracuse. Wow. But it was a nice place. But I couldn't live in Syracuse. Just couldn't do it. I didn't mind the 180 inches of snow a year. I didn't mind the cold. What drove me crazy was the lack of sunlight. 54 sunny days a year. That's it. Because you're right next door to Lake Ontario. Anyway.
Donna, what's your ideal client?
My ideal client? Mm-hmm. Someone who I've kind of shied away from the food service distribution industry now because it is so challenged. In Manhattan, there are no restaurants open at all.
Philadelphia too. It's usually at some point. Philadelphia gets creative. They sit outside on the street and eat. they're hustlers. They're big time hustlers. I ain't mad at them.
I understand that concept completely. But what I'm doing now is I get a lot of referrals from my website and from my email, and I'm going to add you to my email campaign list if you wish. I'm also a member of a group in LA called Performance Operations.
Okay.
This is a conglomerate of about 70 consultants trickled along the Western seaboard. And I was introduced to them by a good friend of mine who I've known for 30 years in Marin County, which is right on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And Ed and I worked together for years. And he told me about this group, and then he recommended they bring me into the group. And in fact, I have a conference call with them on Friday. We have conference calls once a month. And I'll send you a link to their website, and you will see that they are some of the most accomplished, most of them are engineers, but the most accomplished people I've ever seen. And nice guys. I mean, really nice people, not just guys, but women too. Really nice people. People who have their heads on straight. Like I like to say they have their head on straight. They're not arrogant. They don't think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. They know that there are other people out there that probably do things as well, if not better than they do. So they value the relationships that they have with people and with customers and with clients and with competitors as well. So that's what I want to do. I want to be able to be in a position, and I'll get there, where my optimum would probably be 10 clients and not just a 30-day engagement.
Right.
For one client. When I sign on to a customer, let me give you a good example. When I sign on to a customer, I had a client in Louisa, Kentucky, Brown Food Service, doing about maybe $70 million a year in business. And I helped him install a whole new ERP system, which, as you know, is not for the faint of heart. And I was his outside CFO for like 4 years. And that's what I do extremely well, is I can walk into a situation and size things up and say, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this you shouldn't be doing at all. And make sure that all of the reconciliations within the corporation are being done, especially the 4 cardinal points of the compass: cash, receivables, inventories, and payables. If they aren't done, then you shouldn't be issuing financial statements.
Right.
And so I help people recognize that if you don't do those things, you're playing Russian roulette.
Oh, big time. Big time. And it's funny. You know what's interesting though, Donald? I see that happening from all sides of companies. You have your small business owners that are they live in their daily life with that mindset. They're literally playing Russian roulette with themselves. But what's shocking is the larger corporations, the larger companies, who you would expect to know better or do better. And when you try to bring things like this to their attention, they don't want to know, because they're fully aware that they're doing things the wrong way and want to keep doing it that way for whatever odd reason or hidden agenda that they may have. And I say shame on you for that, but hey, I don't want to be nowhere near you when everything blows up in your face.
Hell yes.
Yeah, it's very shocking to see that this happens more frequently and more often than you can imagine. Some of it is pure ignorance and people just don't know any better. And a lot of it is because they just don't care. They have their own agenda.
either that or it's fear.
Well, fear, I think fear of things unraveling. Fear,
Yes,
you can correct me if I'm wrong, fear of things unraveling and more things being exposed than what they really care to have exposed. So they
bingo.
would rather just keep riding that train, whatever kind of train it is. It can't be a gravy train, but they rather keep riding that train out than to correct it because they don't want something exposed that can probably, in their mind, think it would be more damaging.
You're absolutely correct.
Oh,
And
thank you.
they think, and here's their mindset. Well, let's say I'm 55 years old. I only need 10 more years until I can retire. I just have to keep this train going for another 10 years.
Because they're focusing on their legacy, what they think is a legacy. But if you're doing things, in my eyes, if you're doing things that is impacting your integrity, how much of a legacy is it really? Anything that's in the dark will have to come to light eventually at some point in time. Even if you're fortunate enough to retire or walk away with this so-called falsified legacy, what's to stop things from surfacing up and destroying that so-called legacy down the line?
Boeing is a perfect example of that. What, the MAX 737? That cost the CEO his job. But I think that, and I think you're absolutely correct, I think that people in positions of power in corporate America like things the way they are, and they don't want to change it.
They do. Don't rock their boat.
Don't rock the boat, which is basically, it's my job, is to go in and rock the boat. Rock the boat before someone else does.
Oh, yeah. And you know what, Donald? I'm glad to hear you say that. I actually like that you said that because some of the things that I do and some of the things I've done in past experience that may have put me in a position of rocking people of power or those who think they have powers, both, is not to harm them, but like you said, to help them. Who would you rather your boat be rocked with? Someone that can seriously do some damage to you, or someone who's giving you an opportunity to clean up that mess and rectify it so that you can actually have a better, let's say, reputation or ending to your career or that legacy? Really have the legacy that you want to leave behind with some integrity. I would rather help you by telling you, hey, this is what I picked up on. Doesn't look so good. Here's why. And give you that opportunity to fix it and correct it so that you can truly have a legacy that will follow you throughout the days of your life and through your family and all that kind of stuff. That power stuff is, people take it to their head. They really take that power to their head, even when they have none. And they think they do.
Correct. Because someone around them is giving them power that they think they have.
Yes, crew. Yes, you're right. Yes, that's true. That's what you want, we'll do it. Yes, yes, yes. I am not a yes woman. I'm not going to say yes because that's what you want to hear. I'm going to give you opposing ideas, objectives, are ways for you to see things from every angle. Not because I'm tearing down your vision, not because I am up against what you're trying to accomplish, but just giving you various ways of looking at this. And even the things that I strongly feel against that you want to do, I'm giving you an explanation and reason why you may not want to go that way. Don't expect you to take my advice all the time, but you got to have those opposing objectives that will help you make the right decisions.
How many times have you experienced leading the horse to water, but not being able to make them drink?
Can't make them drink it.
No, you can't.
A lifetime. a lifetime I've experienced that. And I've
Oh, yeah.
had,
Me too.
I've had to learn how to not shove that head, the horse's head into the water. Drink, drink.
Drink or drown, one of the two.
You're dying, drink it. And splashing the water in the face. I've taken all kinds of extremes to the matter, with good intentions again, because I see you're dying. Here, let me cup the water in my hand and serve it to you. But you can't force that horse to drink if they don't have the energy or desire to do it themselves.
Exactly. And until they see the downside, they
or
really see the downside.
They have to see it and experience it. Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you a quick story.
Okay.
I was sent out to Ohio to buy a company in the Columbus area. And at one time they were doing about $140 million in sales. The only problem was that 70 million of that was with one customer called Chi-Chi's. And one day the ownership got their 90-day letter. We're going somewhere else. Ultimately, they ended up almost in bankruptcy. And my boss said, I want you to go out and buy this company and do a bulk sale. In a bulk sale, if you're not familiar with it, you get to leave, you send all the vendors a letter, registered letter.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're owed, and you have 10 days to come and get your money.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't do it, you can leave that liability behind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I left $5.5 million of trade payables behind.
Mm.
And one day, one of those was Penske Trucking Company.
Mm.
Had I assumed the old leases, I would have been responsible for the funds that were in arrears, which was about $400,000, and I wasn't going to do that. So I get a telephone call from the president of Penske. He said, "I understand you didn't take on the leases." I said, "You're right, I didn't. I didn't assume them." He said, "I didn't make that debt. Why should I be responsible for it?" I said, "I understand. Well, we've got $6.5 million of equipment on your yard, so that means I'm going to have to come and get the trucks," which was a bit unnerving at that point. And right. I said, "Sir, you can do that, but let me ask you something. You're going to come get these trucks, you're going to take them back to your yard, you're going to try and find new customers, repaint them, re-decal them, and that could take anywhere from 90 to 120 days. And what kind of return on investment are you going to be getting in that 120 days?"
Right.
Like zero. I said, "Why don't you just do a deal with me and go forward? And let's forget about the bygones be bygones." He said, he actually said, "You're pretty smart, and you're also very brave." And I said, "Well, I have to do what I have to do, and you have to do what you have to do." He said, "I'll tell you what, this is like 4 o'clock. He says, if you hear from me by 6, you got a deal. In the meantime, Frank calls me and said," I told him what happened. He said, "Don, you realize if they pull the trucks, we're out of business and you're out of a job." I said, "Thanks for the vote of confidence." I mean, this is the way this guy was.
We're out of business and you're out of a job. Or you might be out of a job and they still in business.
Yeah, for sure. So 6 o'clock comes, no call. 6:05, no call. 6:10, no call. 6:15, no call. 6:20, finally the telephone rings. And it's the president of Penske. He said, "Okay, you smart ass." That's exactly what he said to me. And I won't tell you the verbiage he used, which is not to be, I can't repeat it. But he said, "I'm going to send a couple of people over tomorrow and negotiate a deal." He said, "But I'm going to tell you right now, if you mess with me, there's not going to be a rock in the world that you'll be able to hide under that I won't find you.
Wow.
That's exactly what he said.
Wow. Donald, don't go anywhere. That's the end of our interview, but I want you to stick around because I want us to chit chat just a little bit longer as I learn a little bit more about you. You give some amazing stories. You've shared a lot of great knowledge and information that I think the viewers can enjoy. But I want you to put a pin right there so that I can hear the rest of that story with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. In a time like these days that we're faced and up against, 2020 was very challenging for so many of us. And 2021, although a lot of people are very optimistic about it being better, it's going to bring new challenges. And people need to smarten up and do things different than what they've done in the past prior to COVID-19, as far as business practices and managing and stuff like that, their affairs the right way, and even changing their mindsets. So I encourage people to, consider experts like yourself and professionals like yourself and what you do so well, and just take a good look at what they used to do and how they should probably do things moving forward for their own best interests. Even if they don't like what they hear, if it's the right thing, they just need to do it.